Goeiemôre. Dit gaan vir die kanaalkykers seker 'n verrassing wees, want die gas wat ek vandag het is Simon Rausch. Nou, Simon is heidaglik. Is hy in Rusland, in Moskou, en ek wil 'n bietjie met hom gesels oor wat is sy ervarings daar in Rusland. Môre Simon, welkom by Briekmerke en dankie vir jou tyd man.
Dankie vir jou, Colleen. Ons is baie bly om hier te wees.
Sê vir my Simon, wat is jou mission Moskou toe?
Colleen, dit is presies dieselfde as wat ons in 2017 vir 6 maande in die VSA gemaak het, om bloot rond te gaan en met mense te gesels oor wat gebeur in Suid-Afrika, om hulle bewus te maak van die werklikhede en die waarhede van Suid-Afrika. Ek kan dit so illustreer, toe ons verlede keer, of toe ons daar in Amerika was, toe ek teruggekeer het, Suid-Afrika toe, het ou by die naam van Charles C. Johnson van die Trump span in 2017 in verbinding met my getree en gesê, kyk hier, die president het 'n idee en hy wil graag hê dat julle ons help om dit uit te voer. Hy wil 'n Boeing 747 vol Afrikaners 'n pak en hulle hiernatoe bring as vlugtelinge. En ons het dit van die hand gewys, want ons beleid as Suidlanders, ek ontvang 'n salaris van Suidlanders af, ek werk vir Suidlanders. Ons moet heel konsekwent wees. Ons glo nie daarin nie, ons wil nie hê ons mense moet trek nie. Ons glo ons moet hier vas staan vir die tye wat voor lê. So ons kon mos nie skynheilig of we couldn't be hypocritical and be saying one thing to our members and then say, oh, the president called us, it's so exciting, let's do what he wants. We said, no, thank you very much, we won't get involved in that, but thank you for your consideration. And Charles C. Johnson told me that the president had come up with this idea and he'd interrupted a number of meetings in which he said, come on, let's do it, boys. And in fact, his national security advisor then wrote about that in his the book that he wrote about it. He said that he recorded this thing that Charles C. Johnson told me of Donald Trump interrupting meetings about various other things, whatever they may have been, and saying, yeah, whatever, forget about that for the moment. We should be doing something in South Africa. So my point is that if you work hard and if you do a good job, you'll raise lots of awareness and something will come out of it, either at that time or many years later. We're just here to tell the world about the truth of what's cooking in South Africa.
Okay, ek verstaan. Sê vir my Simon, as jy nou daar by jou hotel uitstap, in die straat in,
ja,
voel jy bedreig daar in Moskou?
Colleen, one way that I can answer you is to say that the batteries on this laptop of mine are shot. So I have to keep it permanently plugged in. But when you go out, if you close the door, then you have to take the key card out of the light. It activates the power in the room. When you put the key card in a certain gleuf, then there's power in the room. If you take the key card out, there's no power, my computer dies, I close the door and I go wherever. So I don't want my computer to die because it's got no batteries. So instead, what I do is I leave the key card in the gleuf with all the power burning in the room, and I leave the door open, and I go in the street, I'll go down and get a shawarma, or I'll go to the Petyoshka, the shop, it's about 10 minutes walk away, shop there for half an hour because I can't understand any of the writing. It takes a long time just to choose a few things, 10 minutes back. So I leave the door to the room open for an hour, and all my stuff is still here, all the money is still here, and it's the same. If I walk around, the other night I couldn't sleep, and so I just took a walk between the commie blocks, the communist blocks of flats, and you could feel afraid, you could think, oh geez, this is a little bit rough here, but you just don't. There's something in the air. I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to sound like all dramatic now, Colleen, but the best I can tell you is that in the roughest areas you feel safer than in Sandton. or 4 ways where I've just spent time with my son. You just do. It's a fact.
Okay. Interesting, because many of the people that I speak to tell me that same thing, that they absolutely cannot describe the feeling of freedom that they experience when they walk the streets in Moscow. Now, the next question. As jy nou so in daai strate loop en jy kyk na die mense wat nou daar op die sypaadjies is en in die winkels is en so, voel jy uit? Do you feel that you don't belong?
On the first night, I've got like a host here, and he invited his chommies for a braai. He's been to South Africa, and he just loves the Buddha. And so he put on a braai, actually a double braai, an early braai, and then 4 hours later, a whole new braai with new meat. I mean, it was like enough meat for 60 people. And at some stage, he said, listen, I'm rubbish with working with my hands. I'm just hopeless. Won't you help me with something? I said, I'm worse than you are. He said, no, don't worry. We're going to be like 8 men to put a trampoline together for the kiddies to jump on. I bought a trampoline. He said, but I can't put it together. I said, all right, I'll help, but I'm stupid with working with my hands. Anyway, so the bunch of us are putting this trampoline together. And he says to me, can you understand what these guys are saying? The other guys, the men. I said, no, I can't understand a word. He said, now I've only been in Russia for 5 hours or whatever. He said, they're agreeing with one another. There's a general agreement that you should stay in Russia. You shouldn't go back to South Africa because you fit in perfectly. You work well with everybody. You help to set the table. You help to cook the meat. You help to do the trampoline. Dis 'n langdradige manier om vir jou te sê, Colleen, dis ons mense. Regtig, dis blanke beskawe Christen mense. Dit is maar net, en ek vat niemand kort nie. I'm not trying to be ugly about other people. All I'm saying is we're the same.
Jy weet, mense op my kanaal kom ouens wat nou maar daar inkom van ander plekke af en so, wat nou nie regtig briekmerke ondersteuners nie, en hulle maak hierdie aantuigings dat ek is 'n Putin-kaner en ek is 'n Russia lover en ek like kommuniste en ek like diktators en al sulke goed. En dan luister ek na hulle dinge en dan dink ek by myself, jy weet, hierdie ouens is so oningelig, maar hulle het vasgehaak in die USSR in die 80s en hulle het nog nooit daar uitgekom nie. Hulle verstaan nie dat die Rusland van Putin is nie die Rusland van die USSR nie. Hulle verstaan dit nie. Sê vir my, as jy nou so met die mense gesels en jou ding doen wat jy nou moet doen, is hulle ontvanklik vir die goed wat jy sê, Simon?
Yeah, very much. They, Vladimir Putin has placed a lot of emphasis on Russians not being too nationalistic and excluding other peoples and all of this kind of thing. But the Russians themselves don't think that way. They all talk, whoever you talk to, without racism, without hatred, without nastiness, without bitterness, they all say the same thing. We don't want people who don't share our religion and our culture and our civilization and our history coming in and taking over. This is our place. Let them stay in their place. So if I as a white South African talk to guys about problems in South Africa and the challenges and what have you, they're very receptive to the idea that you have your interests, you have your belange, you have your ways, you have your culture, you have your benadering to things, you have your identity. That's okay. We have our identity too. That we agree with you. We agree on all of that kind of stuff. Everybody's receptive. There's nobody who's not receptive. I had a dinner party that was arranged for me, and at that dinner party there was two super duper genius cancer researchers. I didn't fully understand, but they supposedly, Nobel Prize winning type people. Two cancer researchers, a very, very senior security officer, a bullion trader, a woman who has her own clothing factory and she turns over just under 100 million rand a year, and then another couple that also have a clothing factory, and they're apparently the biggest supplier of like gym clothing in Russia. And none of those people asked me nasty questions or try to catch me out. They were all like, oh, yeah, okay, now we understand that. Oh, no, very good. All highly intelligent, successful people who understand that a problem is a problem. If the murder rate in South Africa is high, that's a problem. You can't talk it away. If unemployment is high, that's a problem. You can't talk it away. So very pragmatic, logical, kind of sensible people, not emotional and sentimental about these things. They're very aanvanklik.
Ander ding wat iemand vir my gesê het, die ou hy bly nie eintlik nie. Hy werk in Nederland, maar hy is met 'n Russiese vrou getroud en die tyd met die COVID toe het hy geskuif vir Rusland toe. En hulle het nou vir hulle huis gebou daar en alles, jy weet, maar hy werk nog steeds in Nederland. Sê hy vir my een keer op een van sy trips, so vat hy sy seentjies saam met hom Nederland toe. Hy sê toe hulle die oggend uitstap in die straat in. Die eerste ding wat sy kind vir hom sê is, waar's al die kinders? En die kinders daar. Hoe lyk dit daar in Rusland met kinders?
Die plek vrot van die kinders. Elke tweede vrou is swanger of sy stoot so 'n pram. You know, I can't convey it in a way that anybody's going to believe me. The majority of your audience, if I tell the truth, will think I'm exaggerating. So it's better for me just to hold back a little bit. It's something that you can only appreciate if you see it. You can only appreciate it if you walk up the street to the bus stop and there's 6 women there with prams, and you pass 2 pregnant women on the way, and when you get on the bus, there are another 3 pregnant women and 4 prams. It's like, I don't even remember the 70s in South Africa being like that. I was born in 71, so I was bewus by the mid-70s, you know, mid to late 70s. I've got 4 younger siblings. I knew, you know, I know something about seeing pregnant women in the world around me. And I don't remember seeing that like that even in the 70s in South Africa, like I see here. You go down the street, you go down to the Petoshka, which is like the small shops. It's like a spa, but on steroids, half the size of a spa, but 15 times the amount of stuff inside of it. And it's just a thing here. It's these children are everywhere.
Hy sê vir my in Rusland. Hy sê hier in Suid-Afrika het jy in die malls ons al so sectionkie waar dit nou vir die kiddies is en so. Hy sê vir my in Rusland, as jy by die malls kom, dan is 'n hele vloer van daai mall is net vir die kinders, vir entertainment, vir die kinders. Hy sê elke blok, straatblok in Rusland het 'n park in met klimrake en goed vir die kinders. En hy sê vir my, Colleen, as jy wil hê die Russiese regering moet jou doodmaak, dan moet jy 'n kind touch hier in Rusland.
Colleen, this is my vitamin B water. You talk about Elke. Soos in Elke Laaste, I've done a lot of walking here. My legs are lame from walking around this city. In fact, I've taken the day off because I can't do any more walking. My knees and my thighs are kaput. So I've seen maybe 200 residential blocks, let's say 150 to be safe, and a minimum of 1 speelplek in a block. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and then sometimes they'll have like a open air gym, just not in a special place, not Sandton City or whatever. This is between 9 commie blocks, those communist high-rise blocks, awful things. They'll have an open air gym and everything is in immaculate condition. None of the weights have been stolen. Nothing has been torn. There's no graffiti. There's in immaculate condition. And you can see that it's been there for 6 or 7 years. It's not that they put it there yesterday and it still looks okay. It's been there for donkey's years and it's in immaculate condition. So yeah, the kiddies and general health and welfare and what have you. I went on a drive yesterday. We were going to a place, this guy that's kind of hosting me, and they pointed out they've just built one of the biggest maternity hospitals in the world, and it's like practically free. Not free, but it's very, very, very cheap. And they've just built the world's largest infection hospital. They finished building it last year. So that kind of stuff, social welfare and what have you, is good here.
Sê vir my, as jy nou so in die strate stap in Moskou, en ek neem aan jy was al in die strate as dit weet soort van peak hour is en is al baie traffic op die sypaadjies. Sien jy vet mense?
Firstly, rush hour in Moscow is like rush hour in Hofmeyer or Vonnekloof or Orania. The roads here are so wide that we were stuck in traffic the other day, and I thought, oh, this is going to be forever. It's going to really ruin my afternoon. And it was about 5 minutes and we were through it in rush hour. The road system here is to die for, Colleen. You just move easily in rush hour. No, I haven't seen one fat person that I can think of yet. I can't bring up a mental image of a fat person so far. No.
Okay, because that is what, if I look at the videos that the bloggers puts up and so of the people in the streets and so, you don't see fat people. And I spoke to a guy that lives there, and he lives at Lake Baikal, about it. And he said to me, if you see really fat people on the street in Russia, the chances are 99% that they're tourists.
Yeah, I can believe it.
And
everybody here looks well. Their skin looks clear and they look healthy. And, you get the odd sort of, excuse my language, but, child that looks a little bit slack. Some girl who hasn't turned out well and she's got gothic black hair and she's wearing stupid clothes or whatever. But everybody comments on it. Everybody, it horrifies the society that you have. Okay, there are no fat people, but when people are not in a good way, when they don't look good, when they're not healthy, when they're not, the society doesn't like it. The society wants to breed. It wants to have beautiful women and healthy men and generate lots of money. And as I said to you earlier, one of my sons is crazy about Mercedes. And I phoned him after I'd been here 24 hours and said to me, you will not believe it. In my whole life, I've never seen as many now I'm talking about in Berlin, Frankfurt, Hamburg, New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Cape Town, Johannesburg. I've not seen as many in my life together as I had seen in Moscow in 24 hours. I phoned him the next day after I landed of Maybach Mercedes, Geländewagens, S-Class Mercedes, and AMGs. So there's a vibrancy and a healthiness financially, economically, health-wise, children-wise.
So tell me, the public spaces, is it littered?
I did an interview yesterday. You wouldn't have seen it yet. It hasn't come out, in which I was debating with a Russian whether there was litter. He was saying, yeah, we've got litter. I've said, yeah, but I haven't seen it. I accept maybe there is some somewhere, but I've now spent a week here. You've dragged me around this whole flipping place. I've been from the Kremlin to the Kaleidoscope through the Moscow subway. I've been on the trams. I've been on the buses for about 150 kilometers. The taxi, we got lost one night with the taxi man and me. My host wasn't with us. And I said, I haven't seen the litter. I believe, okay, you've got litter somewhere, but I haven't yet seen that one piece of litter that allows me to say, okay, I saw a piece of it.
Well, you see, this is what amuses me, actually. Those people are living clean. They're eating healthy. They place great value in children. They are so positive about family values. I can't understand why people allow themselves to be brainwashed by the media into thinking, yeah, all Russians live in caves and in stone huts and things like that, and they are uneducated and they're uncultured and all of that. But that is the image that the media paints for us. Now,
It's a sorry.
If you go through the shops, specifically food stuff, do you see real junk food there?
Colleen, you can get some very cheap 2-minute noodles. That's the only thing that I would say approaches junk food. But I bought some of those 2-minute noodles. I've got one here. There's another one that I want to show you if I can just reach it. Just hold on, Colleen. Excuse me. I bought this stuff thinking, okay, it's like a cheap junk. You know, it's for peanuts. It ends up having whole rye and not wheat. What's this other blooming thing in it? So even the junk is healthy. There are two guys who I met who would like to make business in South Africa, and they've got access to certain things. So steel products, it's stupidly low prices and solid. I've seen the samples. Tried to pick the thing up, too damn heavy, and fertilizer and foodstuffs. And the one guy was making the point to me, oh, by the way, just because the prices are good doesn't mean that it's rubbish. We don't trade in rubbish. We don't have any chemicals in the foods. He said, we'll provide you with the list. And when you go into a Petyorshka, like corner shop, half the size of a Spar, it's like going into the what they call the Whole Foods in the USA. It's not that they don't sell vodka and they don't sell cigarettes and that they don't sell 2-minute noodles, some of which 2-minute noodles are meant to be rubbish, but actually they're full of whole grains. You know, it's like eating flipping muesli. But the milk products and the yogurt products and the meat products, you can just see they're classy. And they've got like little stamps on them where they have to announce what, not just where you put ingredients with funny names that nobody understands, but absolutely how much of this product is pure milk. And the lowest that you can find is 75%. It's all 80, 90% is pure milk in the yogurt and the cheese and the what have you. So I don't know, I'm not an expert, but geez, like it feels like I'm shopping in the Woolworths for less than the price of the U-Save. You know, that's the way it comes across to me. I'll tell you what, I've got it in my fridge because I could get it cheap. Smoked salmon, I got that for about 20 Rand. So in South Africa, that's well over 100. I've got, this is beef. It cost about 10 Rand, obviously a lot more in South Africa. I've got some sausages. They might be a bit dodgy. I've got pate, pure pate, and that cost about 12 Rand, I think. And I've got, I'll show you. So what I eat every day is rye bread, high quality rye bread. They emphasize that it's Russian rye bread. It's the best rye bread in the world in terms of its purity. It's not bleached. They don't take out the germ. They're not allowed to do that stuff. They're not allowed to use GMO. And so I make sandwiches. And there I've got some butter. You can see it says it's 82% pure milk and cream cheese. And here I've got some Russian sauerkraut, which is very, very, very healthy. Dr. Eric Berg talks about it. And all of this cost me, this will be about 3 days worth of food. And it cost me roughly $20. So about 400 Rand. And that included 2 boxes of cigarettes and a couple of waters and some other things.
You know, Simon, I listen to what you say and I think, and I ask myself, why don't the people just do the little bit of research and get the real facts, because we are being lied to on so many levels that
Yes.
it is absolutely astounding. Now,
Excuse
another
me.
thing that I want to ask you, if you are in these shops,
Yeah.
the people that are
Sorry, Jimmy.
serving you there,
Yeah.
you know, the personnel working these shops, are they young people? Are they middle age? Are they old people?
It's everybody. Everybody. Mostly young. It's not like in the US. In the USA, I've spoken about this before. In the 3 months that I was there in 2023, you could go into a shop and there would be, say, 5 people working there, and all of them would be in their 70s and even 80s. It sounds absurd. It sounds like a exaggeration, but it's the truth. And it happened time after time after time after time after time. And I made lots of videos for Saitlanders while I was traveling around. We called it Saitlanders in a Sedan because I rented a little car from a guy there, about this phenomenon of how these elderly pensioners in the USA have to go back to work because they can't eat. They can't survive because of the inflation rate. Here, it's different. You do get some older people, but people here tend to retire a little bit early, I think. I haven't really asked, but it seems as if by the time people are 55 here, they're just, you know, taking it easy in the sunshine. They get their pension, they've got their flat. Gas and what have you is cheap. Gas and electricity are very cheap here. Water is cheap here. So it's like youngsters, but up to 40s, maybe early 50s is the kind of people that you will find serving in the shops.
Okay. Now, the next question. If you walk into the streets, how many policemen do you see?
Colleen, you don't see a lot, but you will see here and there'll be 2 guys. And everybody will be slightly conscious of them. It's not like people are afraid, but if you're walking with your chummy, somebody will mention that people are conscious of the fact that if there are 2 policemen there, behave yourself. Now's not the time. It's not our society. That's not how we function. We're law-abiding. People don't jaywalk here. So there were no cars, Colleen. So I thought, well, I'll just, I couldn't see any cars on a boulevard, a 5-lane boulevard. So I thought, well, I'll just skip across. Nobody else. So I stopped doing it. I only did it that once. Here, if the robot turns red, you stop. If it's green, you may go. You don't make up your own rules as you go along. So it's a very law-abiding society. And people respect the presence of the police. And all of the policemen that I've seen so far, every single one has got an automatic rifle.
Now tell me, isn't it a case of that it is a disciplined society?
Yeah, it is disciplined. It is, and they talk about that. They talk like it. I told you about that double brow that I was at. They cooked meat at 6 o'clock, and then 11 o'clock they started a whole new fire, and we were supposed to start eating from scratch again. They talk about how the West has become undisciplined and how the children of the West are undisciplined, and they feel that they can do anything, any behavior, and their parents almost don't have a right to discipline. But yeah, people are disciplined. I'm accustomed, I've got a little bit of a thing of that everybody should walk on the left-hand side. Then nobody would bump into each other in Cresta Mall. But here it's the right-hand side. So, of course, I come here like an idiot. I think I know everything. I arrive, I'm doing my left-hand side thing. And then I realized that I was the one Mampara messing the whole system up. Everybody walks on the right-hand side. This is not Cresta Mall. This is not Eastgate Mall or Northgate where half the guys are getting it wrong. Everybody is on the right-hand side. It's just so civilized. It's like,
It sounds amazing. And in a way, it reminds me of the 70s and the 80s in South Africa. Now, there was another question I wanted to ask you. Do you see a lot of military people?
I wouldn't say a lot. I went to the Victory Day parade, obviously I wasn't an invited guest in the front row kind of thing. And that whole area around the Kremlin was sealed off. So I was at the road, or one of the roads, closest to the sealed off portion. And over that period, the couple of days before, 260 international flights to Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, and Vnukovo airports, the three famous kind of Soviet airports that people might recognize. That 260 international flights were stopped. And during the Victory Day parade, apparently there were Ukrainian drone attacks, and 18, none landed, but there were 18 recorded things where they used these fancy schmancy air defense to shoot down. I didn't see anything. But my point is that although there weren't many military people around, clearly the military was present if they were shooting down drones out of the sky, left, right, and center above our heads. Or it might be a Buldas story, but that was the Russian Ministry of Defense official statement, that 18 attacks surrounding the Victory Day parade had been averted or stopped, or whatever is the correct military word.
Okay, what I actually want to know is, now in the normal conditions, is there soldiers on the street or what? Or is it something that you don't see visually everywhere, soldiers?
No, you don't see them at all, except that in this hotel that I'm staying in, earlier on, I had to go to I went down the hall and came back, and passed 4 soldiers, plus 2 in the front, so 6 soldiers who were going with all of their stuff. Sorry, and another one, a 7th soldier, going with their stuff now to deployment. So this hotel is used, apparently, from what I gather, as a kind of a semi waypoint barracks. And so in this hotel, there are soldiers coming and going, guys coming from training. You know, they have this crazy, I say crazy, they've got somewhere between 30 and 50,000 men are volunteering for the front a month.
Yeah, so I believe.
Yeah. So those guys obviously go for training and what have you. They don't go straight to the front, but this hotel is like I don't know what's the right word, but like a way station. Okay, you've done your training. There's 7 of you. You're going to Moscow. From there, you're going to catch a train. Then you're going to catch a plane. Then you're going to catch an automobile, and you'll report to such and such a place on such and such a date. So in that sense, yes, you do see soldiers just passing through, youngsters.
All right. Are we going? It's over 35 minutes. What I want to ask you is, would you be reluctant to move to Russia?
I'm 54 years old, and I've got sons in South Africa, and I'm married to the Suidlanders SARC. So I wouldn't do it. But if I was 25 years younger, it's not a matter of reluctance. I would do it. I would move to Russia. If I didn't have children, I would come here and build a family here, because it's a Christian environment, a conservative environment. Those things are important to me. The church is important here. People believe in God, and they talk about it in just like, run-of-the-mill conversations. They believe in their people, in their race, in their culture, in their history, in their identity, and those things are important to me. So I would say almost with 100% certainty, if I was 30 years younger and I hadn't yet got children, so it was a matter of families and that kind of thing, or if I had a wife that was like-minded, yes, I would leave South Africa with my 2 children or 15 children or whatever and come and start over again. Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. They're begging people to come in. They're offering fantastic land of black soil. The support is here. The taxation system is great, 13%. It's honestly.
Simon, I'm asking that question just for the fact that there's such a lot of noise being made about the guys that got opportunities to go to America and so. And I am of the opinion, after all the research that I did since 2022, that if you are a white Christian man or a white Christian woman and you want to leave South Africa, the safest place in the world that you can go for your future is Russia. Because
sorry, I beg your pardon.
Russia is stable, they're consistent, they're committed, they're disciplined. It's not like in, I mean, Trump is doing a lot of things now for America, but who's the next president? And he undo everything that Trump has done, and that's how it works, and that's how it goes. In Russia, it doesn't seem to me like things are fluid. Things are solid. I listened to an interview that a journalist had with Putin, and she asked him specifically, she said, "You are so anti-gay, but there are gays here in Moscow." And he said to her, "Yes, we have gays here in Moscow." He said, "But they will not go into the streets and have parades and things like that." And the best thing, I don't have to do anything about it. The local population will fuck them up. And then she said to him, "And you make this big story about the Nazis, but there's Nazis here in Moscow." And he said, "Yes, they are here. But they are not in the streets. They are not in the people's faces. They stay within their own little circles. And once again, if they should go into the streets, the community will fuck them up." And then he said to her, "Let's just be practical and realistic. Every society has its shit in it. It's just how the society cope with it." And I listened to that and I thought to myself, look, that man, he understands life. He understands life. He's got wisdom, the guy. If you take into consideration that Russia has got 190 ethnic groups, 2,400 cultural groups, and the Russian government has got zero tolerance for any discrimination. I spoke to a guy that lives in one of the smaller cities, and he said to me, when he grew up, their neighbors were Muslims. He said, but his dad was violent on them, him and his brothers, about respecting those people. And it's all about respect. And, I listen to those things like that, and I think to myself, if you try and imagine the chaos after the 90s with the USSR falling apart, and that Putin inherited, and he cleaned it up. I'm convinced he was successful because inherently the Russian people are good people. And the moment that they saw they've got a leader that pushes for good values, they went out with him and supported him flat out. Is there anything you would like to say in conclusion to the viewers?
No, there's not much to add, Colleen. You asked questions that kind of, got the most out of the conversation. I was just, while you were talking, I was sitting here working out the groceries, and it was less than I thought. We don't have to go back there. We've been there, but yeah, it's just a terrific place. I've been so excited to be here. I wish that I was a part of this society. I like to compete, and I like to win. I'm a little bit vain and conceited that way. And of course, in the new South African rainbow, you don't get that opportunity. It's not a wide open world of opportunity, as it's not anymore in the USA. This economy is growing at 5 times the rate of the US economy. It's not burdened by debt, and I would love to live here. I'd love to come here and say, right, my former profession was as a projects manager, quite in a high pressure niche. I want to compete. I want to play the game. I want to earn the money. I want to be part of this flipping exciting dynamism. It's a lekker spot. Yeah, I can't say I'm looking forward to going back to misery.
That's a very important question to ask you.
Yeah.
The people that you've been interacting with, the people that you actually interacted with, do they understand the drive for self-determination?
Yeah, they do. They do, because they have it. I'll be very brief. Russia was a small group of people that came out of Scandinavia, and they settled in the Ukraine. When the Tatars came along, they ran away to Novgorod and then Moscow. So they are Scandinavian people, the Volga Vikings, Swedish people, basically, with a little bit of mixture. They then were so successful that they were able to take over enormous pieces of land, 11 time zones. Russia's the biggest country in the world by a long way, as everybody knows. Within that, there are smaller population groups, but they've managed to make what's called a modus vivendi, finding a way to live together, where everybody's more or less okay with it. And in the Caucasus, the Dagi people and the Chechens and what have you have a saying which goes, "We didn't come voluntarily into Russia, and we're not going to leave voluntarily either." In other words, it's lekker here. You know, so the Russians understand the idea of different people with different ideas and different ways and different styles of doing things. And that's why they've got all these little republics. In Chechnya, it's a Muslim place. You do your thing. We're not going to interfere. They've mastered the art of allowing distinct population groups to flourish on their terms, almost like a balkanization of the country. I'll probably get shot by some Russian for saying that.
No. The thing is this. They understand the reality of cultural differences. They understand that.
Yeah, for them it's everything.
And I think the big driving success force there is respect, nothing else. Respect, the basis. Respect. They respect you. You're different, but that's good neighbors.
Yeah. Good fences make good neighbors, and that's what they've got here. They've got a system of good fences where, the constituent republics, I can't remember how many there are, but they're like 30 or whatever that make up Russia. That's your ethnic group. That's your Orania. You get on with it there. You're part of us. We beat your grandfather to death 400 years ago. This is Russia. You're not going to run away and do your own thing, but we give you your place, your republic. They don't call it a province or a canton, or it's a republic. You have your own republic. You make your own laws. You do your own thing. We respect that. They're big into it. For them, cultural differences, ethnic differences are a very meaningful thing, and they comment on it all the time. All the time. Like, you kind of get uncomfortable. You think, yes, if this was South Africa, you'd be in trouble. You can't talk about ethnicity that much, but they talk about it all the time. That's the way we do it. You've got your spot there. Carry on. Do the best.
Well, Simon, this was a lekker chat, and I'm sure we're going to have some more chats. And once again, I want to thank you for being willing to engage with me on these things, because what I find here in South Africa very disturbing is that there's a great lack of people talking to one another. There's a lot of people saying things to others, but there's not much talking going on. And on Brickmerke, that is one of my main missions. Let's talk to one another. If we differ on a point, let's talk about it, not get into a fucking screaming match and all of that shit, and then start blaming this and blaming, and eventually you start blaming Jan van Riebeeck and all that shit. Let's look at what's happening today. Let's talk about it. How can we manage to live together under these circumstances? Because it's a fallacy to think all people are the same.
Oh, it's just it's an absolute scientific fallacy in the most rudimentary genetic sense. Our hard wiring is now well proven to be manifestly different. My instincts for whatever it is and other people's are manifestly different. That doesn't make me better and them worse, but this thing of trying to get everybody to fit into the same mold is just
bullshit.
Stupid.
Simon, well, have a great day in Moscow.
I will.
And I am actually jealous. Have a great day. Boerieman out.
Cheerio, Colleen. Thank you for having Suidlanders. Bye-bye.